Lovely morning or lovely afternoon or lovely evening. In our episode of today, we are continuing the list of tips and recommendations that will help you become the best EFL teacher ever. In the previous video, we talked about 3 major tips that will help you reshape your performance and your method of delivering the cutting edge kind of lesson to your students. In this episode, we are just advancing you forward to help you open new horizons for becoming the best EFL teacher. Now, lots of people actually can be teachers, but some of them might not reach the level of becoming very professional English teachers. I'm not saying that by watching this video, you are going to be able to become professional English teacher. Maybe this lesson will help you listening. It will help you guide you through some of the books and recommendations and sources and encyclopedias that I recommend you to check out, that I already checked out, and they worked really well in my methods of teaching and in my way of teaching my students. If you want to see the kind of ways that I'm teaching English, you can subscribe to my page on Facebook and also my YouTube channel. You'll find an access for free to all the lessons that I teach on online, distantly or face-to-face. But due to COVID-19, I limited the amount of contacts that I do have with my students on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, just because of the precaution of COVID-19 or COVID-20, whatever. So the point that I want to highlight here is that we need to significantly emphasize how you shape your applied teaching by reflecting back on the theory of teaching. A lot of teachers rely on a syllabus because it gets boring after repeating the same lesson again and again and again and again and again and again to a point of saturation. So students and teachers get saturated with the same kind of materials. So they just start to do it like they eat lunch or eat dinner or go to WC. And this has nothing to do with creativity. In order to become a creative teacher, you need to do something once in very smart and creative way and make sure you change it, repeat it, alter it, and take a professional course to make it better. And this does not happen haphazardly. There should be some harmony of things that you need to do in order to reach this optimal level of performance. And it's tiring, it's exhausting, it's taking lots of your energy. But remember something, the best way you can go around this kind of thing is to document your work, put it online, and let people watch it. And you're going to be a pioneer in this field. To continue the list of tips and recommendations that I do have to you as an English teacher, we're starting with tip number 1 and 2 and 3 that I already talked about in the previous video that you can watch here. In this video, we're continuing with tip number 4, which is always cater to students and learners' needs when you're designing your lesson plan. Now, a lot of people actually are going to say, well, we already have a lesson plan. Well, that lesson plan was designed before meeting the students. When you meet the students, lots of things change. The syllabus and the curriculum and the textbooks that you rely on have been designed 5 years or 10 years ago by an agency that is located abroad. They have no idea about the number of students in your classroom. Maybe you have 50, maybe you have 100, maybe you have 400 students in your classroom. How come one textbook can cater for all the needs and necessities and wants of this population in the classroom? It's really hard. So what you need to do is to be very flexible and adjustable to the kind of necessities and needs that come and pop up in the process of your teaching of English in the classroom. And that does not happen overnight. It happens after consistent amount of observation with heavy duty kind of teaching that you will face during your career, first year, second year, and third year. So in a nutshell, tip number 4 is stating the following. Why are you students studying English? How will they use English in the future? These are major questions that you should ask yourself before delivering the lesson. What do they need to learn when they study English? The answer to these questions helps you specify what and how to teach and what to focus on. So why, how, and what? Why and how and what are the major principles on which you rely heavily in order to design the lesson of this day. I always compare English teachers to tailors because they cut the pieces of cloths according to the needs and necessities by millimeters of the person who is going to get the suit eventually. What you need to do is to make sure that you use a pair of scissors to scissor the lesson plan accordingly to what the students need. This is the best way you can go around it. If you have a textbook, just scissor the textbook. Take out the things that you think physically as an EFL learner and teacher think students will need, and then apply that in the classroom. Do not give a lesson as if you're orchestrating people to do pretty much everything. You need to scale it up from closed activities to open activities, and I'll talk about the variation and the differences out there between these two. But first of all, you need to make sure that you adjust the lesson and the lesson plan according to the student's needs. That's pretty much number one. The next one is kind of related to the train of thought of the previous one, and that is always be prepared to make changes to your lesson plan. If the lesson you have prepared isn't working, don't be afraid to modify it. Be sensitive to the students and the conditions. Be sensitive to the students and the conditions around you when you're delivering that lesson, because eventually students will leave that classroom maybe knowing something or not knowing something, or excited or confused, and this is pretty much your nightmare. If they are confused, they're not going to give you good feedback about what they learned, and eventually everything is going to collapse. Tip number 6 is something that I heavily rely on when I start a lesson. The first week, the first 10 days of the course, I try to find what the students, our learners, know. Pretty much everything. I try to investigate the kind of skills, the kinds of hobbies, the kind of countries that they travel to, everything. Because in this way, you are going to be having encyclopedic knowledge about who you are dealing with and how you are dealing with and what you should do in order to address and bridge the gap between what they know and what they need to know. So tip number 6 is, this is an ongoing process. Students may have already been taught a particular grammar point or vocabulary. Base your lessons on their prior knowledge, which is something we call schemata, and provide them with additional information that they don't know. And this is something we call in linguistics or applied linguistics scaffolding. Scaffolding is to build on what they know to get them from where they are to where they want to be. Tip number 7 is pretty much quintessential and the currency of English teachers, which is be knowledgeable about grammar. If you're not knowledgeable about grammar, I don't think it's going to work. You need to make sure that you know the basic alphabet of grammar. This is going to enable you to become very successful teacher. Once you understand the foundation of grammar, the principles and needs and meanings of grammar, you're going to maximize the amount of learnability and knowledge that the learners have. You're just a joint between grammar and learners. You're not the source of knowledge. You're just a channel of transferring of data of grammar to their minds. How you can do that and cater for that and usher that to be safely arriving in their minds is your job. So you need to be very knowledgeable about grammar. And once you find a textbook that complicates things or just tells things that are not within the same level or +1 of the student's level, maybe you need to consider or reconsider finding another source and demote this kind of source. Essentially, what you need to do is You don't have to be a linguist to teach EFL. Most of what you need to know can be learned from reading the students' textbooks, but with an extra effort. Often the rules and explanations about structure in the students' books are much more accessible and realistic than in other textbooks. Tip number 8 is about culture. And I have extensively talked about culture in previous videos. Culture is essential. Without culture, everything collapses. Now, let me tell you this example here. I was reading one of the textbooks. I was in Baghdad's book fair. And I was reading one of the storybooks that one of the publishers have out there. And in that textbook, I looked on second or third page of that story, and they were talking about ham and pigs. And I was like, well, considering we are in Middle East, lots of people don't eat ham and, don't talk about pigs, unless they mean something bad. So putting that in a story for children is not going to be a good idea. Maybe that is going to instigate some sort of rebellion in the classroom or once things get to their family. So you need to be very careful with the culture you're teaching at. If you're teaching in the South, there are certain norms and conditions and traditions and culture and certain behaviors you need to do or avoid. If you're teaching in Baghdad and the suburbs, for example, or in the North or in another Arab countries, you need to cater for their culture, understand it, synthesize it, and embed it with English. English is a channel to help people understand and be understood. And understanding culture can be a valuable tool for teaching. Knowing it will enable you to communicate effectively with the students. That is the last point and that I wanted to highlight here in this lesson for teachers. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to giving you and delivering to you another lesson for tips and recommendations for English teachers. Have a good evening or a good morning or a good afternoon. مدرب اللغة وليد خالد.